Hello, I'm Alex Smyth, and on today's episode of Parasport Nation, the Canadian Boccia Championships take place this weekend in Ottawa. Peter Leyser, the Executive Director of Boccia Canada, shares what to expect from the event. Plus, ASRAB's Site Night in Calgary concluded on the weekend. I have a few interviews that I collected while on the ground. Let's get started with Parasport Nation.
Welcome to Parasport Nation with Alex Smyth and Nathan Clement.
As always on Parasport Nation, I am joined by my lovely and talented co-host, Nathan Clement. Nathan, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Alex. How about yourself? How are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Still a bit tired from the travel from Calgary, but it was a great event. We will get into that later on in the show. We got a couple interviews. I'll have a bit of a reaction and a bit more of a deep dive later on in the show. But let's kick things off, Nathan, with the PSN update.
Now, the PSN update.
Tipping off an eventful weekend, Canada's U23 men's wheelchair basketball team was in the land of the rising sun for the Kyushu Champions Cup. After an opening loss to the host Japan, the next-gen Canadian squad bounced back in a demanding round robin to secure their way to the final against Spain. In the title fight, Canada would come up short against the Spanish, securing second place in the tournament. Keeping with the future, we trade baskets for tries, as the Rugby Stars of Tomorrow took battle at the U.S. Developmental Invitational. Opening with a win against Great Britain, Canada's wheelchair rugby team saw themselves in tight contests against the Brits and Americans in the six-game tournament. The Invitational saw Canada finish 1-5. Next up on the wheelchair rugby calendar is the 2024 Wheelchair Rugby Women's Cup, coming to Paris in December. Follow PSN as we announce the roster and get you set for the fourth edition of the tournament. In seven-a-side World Cup soccer action, Canada opened the round robin with a defeat to Brazil 4-0. Next up for the Reds is a battle against Japan on Tuesday. All matches can be streamed on the IFCPF YouTube page. And that's the Parasport update.
Thank you very much for that, Nathan. Now, one thing I really want to pick up on is the fact that it seems like most of these competitions now that are really starting to take place, a lot of them are these like developmental tournaments, which is fantastic. You know, we just finished and wrapped that Paralympic cycle with Paris a couple months ago. Now you're seeing these under 23 competitions. You're seeing these developmental camps and international tournaments taking place. Like, what value as an athlete, especially one in the developmental phase of their career, does having these like international competitions early on in a cycle do to help set you up for success and maybe catch some eyes and ears from, you know, the national team coaches and groups as they start to look towards the future?
It's really exciting, like as an athlete who's been in the developmental position, but also been on the senior squad of many teams before. It's one of those exciting times where you can really see that next crew come in there, but also as someone who's trying to fight for a roster spot, someone who's trying to make that impression, someone who's just trying to really grow and develop. It's really exciting to have these opportunities, like being able to go out to Japan, play in a basketball tournament over there, go up against solid programs like Spain and Japan, or even in the U.S. developmental tournament where you have a great mix of athletes. You have some of the top two countries in the world, like the United States and Great Britain, or even as some other programs start to finish what would be their Paralympic cycle or their Paralympic calendar, as they have like the odd competition here or there. Is good for that young, fresh blood to come out. And we're going to talk about it later with Site Night, but really going to you for a second too, is this is a great time for developmental sports to really take off. And you've been at various different tournaments in Alberta and Nova Scotia. So for yourself, what do you see with these kinds of tournaments, and how important is it to get that next crew in there?
Yeah, I think it's important for a number of reasons, not only for the growth of the sport and getting interest and kind of more competition from an athletic perspective, but, you know, with Canada to have, you know, a presence coast to coast, like you get that involvement from folks with disabilities who just want to get engaged and connect with parasport in some way, shape, or form. Not everyone's going to be a high performance athlete who makes a national team. But, you know, the developmental pathways, these provincial pathways, like people will go to different levels within the sport. So if you have that established kind of pipeline that maybe you want to do something a bit more competitive than just a club level competition. Okay, maybe there's a provincial level, or maybe there's a developmental side you can go and explore. And it allows you to kind of scratch that itch, see how well you can do on higher levels of competition, but also not kind of forcing you to take on a massive responsibility and a commitment to succeed and pursue a national level team or sport or a spot. So I think there's a lot of positives to it. And again, with the developmental side, you also get to grow the sport in different ways. Like you talked about the wheelchair rugby competition. Well, the one that's coming up is the women's wheelchair rugby. And that's such a important factor because folks may not know wheelchair rugby is an open sport. So men and women can compete within the same team on the same time. And there's actually kind of caveats and rule changes to help promote more women in the sport and on the court. But you don't really see that translate. So having a competition like that, where you get that opportunity to have more women involved in wheelchair rugby, maybe you have more chance to kind of scout talent and really foster development of the program that you can see down the road on the national side. This is going to pay dividends.
Yeah, completely and exactly. Is the right? For example, the Wheelchair Rugby Women's Cup, it's their 4th edition of it, and every year the field gets bigger. Every year you get more athletes coming out there, and that developmental program just keeps expanding. And that's one of the great things about a lot of the women's para sports too, is you see it with women's para ice hockey. You see it with women's blind hockey. You see it all across the board as you have other Paralympians and other athletes in different sports coming in, joining these teams, giving their experience, giving their leadership. One person's name that comes to mind is Brianna Hennessy. Having someone like that with the women's wheelchair rugby is major and massive, just because you have someone there who's reached the pinnacle of sport, who's reached the podium before, but now she's coming back. She's a leader. She's a captain. She's helping that next crew really see how it's done, how it's possible. And it's just much more than just obviously performances on the court or on the field or in the water. In her case, it's that strength. It's that engagement. It's having a kid, having someone who's 14, 15, 16, or just had an injury, have fun, have a smile on their face at the end of the day, and have that burning desire, have that burning passion to do something they love and have that sense of community. And that is so key, and that is so vital across like all of the Paralympic sports and all of the para programs. And that's what makes it so unique, is you have a lot of these top level athletes who are finding ways to give back, finding ways to support, but also push themselves to the limits and see what's possible in their own right and in their own careers. But it's really, really incredible what's being done with the Wheelchair Women's Cup coming up in December in Paris.
Absolutely. And from one competition to another, because the Canadian Boccia Championships are set to kick off this weekend in Ottawa. It marks the 30th anniversary of the championship, and it's the first time Ottawa is going to host it. So we had a chance to chat with Peter Leyser, who is the executive director of Boccia Canada. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here. Appreciate the time.
So obviously it's an exciting time for you in the boccia world. Like, the championships are coming up. What can folks expect? Like, what is the value and what is the kind of the impact of having these boccia championships within Canada?
Oh, it's huge. It's tremendous. So this is our 30th anniversary of the Canadian Championships. Actually, the first time ever we've hosted it in Ottawa. And it really brings together the boccia community, which is filled with sportsmanship and camaraderie and bringing people together. And I think from this year's perspective, you're going to see some tremendous skill, some tremendous athleticism on display, probably some upsets for sure, and a really skilled field. We have national team members that are participating. Those were at the Paralympics that were participating. So we expect a really exciting competition. The actual competition starts on Thursday, and runs until Sunday.
What's that like with a competition like that when you have Paralympic stars that are going to be there, but also you have that developmental crew coming in there? And how important is it for those opportunities for the up-and-comers to get out there and play against some stars that have been to Paralympics or represented Canada internationally?
Well, it's huge, Nathan, actually. It's very huge. One thing I really love about this boccia community is you will see these experienced athletes that have been to a number of Canadian championships or the Paralympics in the past, or world championships or world boccia events, and they'll take the time to spend with some young and up-and-comers that are new in the sport. And I don't know if they're specifically sharing strategy necessarily on the court, but certainly they're just sharing their experience and their thoughts and their equipment and how to travel and coaching and training techniques. So it's really nice to actually see that here. And I can tell you this year we have 43 athletes participating from 5 different provinces across the country. There are some up-and-comers that are going to be here. So they're all looking, frankly, to make an impression because we're about to select our 2025 National Boccia team. So those that are on the team will be fighting for that spot, and those that are up and coming will be looking to make a good impression.
Can you talk a bit about the growth of the sport and the movement within Canada? As you mentioned, this is the 30th year of having the Canadian Championships. Like, what has that evolution been like for boccia in Canada?
Yeah, tons of evolution, Alex, for sure. I really believe the credibility of the sport has increased compared to 1993 when we hosted in Winnipeg, our very first championships. There's certainly more awareness of the sport, and particularly within the disability community. And oftentimes, just with the level of disability, neurological disabilities that our athletes have, they might not necessarily find a spot in other para sports, but they know that they have a home in the sport of boccia. So I think that has really, to answer your question, I think it's really increased over the past 30 years. The skill and the athleticism, you need to bring your A game now. You can't just show up and hope to win. I mean, the training and the coaching that goes in before you even get to the Canadian Championships has certainly increased over the last 30 years. And the event itself, really just from a professionalism standpoint, the venues that we hosted at, the look, the feel, that's all really changed over the past 30 years for sure, as well as the people that are involved. So our referees and our classifiers, just in terms of the certification process and the training with those officials, that we've certainly seen, night and day between 30 years ago for sure.
Now that we're a couple months removed from the games, is there any big takeaways from the Tokyo to Paris cycle that you're going to be looking at going from Paris now into LA in 2028?
Yeah, certainly from Paris perspective, Paris was great. Like I thought, and I was there with our team. The venues that they hosted, you had the, outside the iconic Paris venues of Grand Palais and Eiffel Tower, the crowds were terrific. From our perspective, like in a boccia perspective, again, you need to bring your A game. The level of play has increased so much over the past quad, just even the past 4 years, going back to Tokyo. I guess technically not a quad 3 years, but you understand. Or even back to Rio in 2016. World Boccia has 80 members now across the world. So the sport is growing tremendously, particularly in Asia. I want to say I wouldn't want to be quoted, but I think around 7 of 11 gold medals went to Asian countries. So the growth of the sport is certainly happening. But to your point, Nathan, we're turning our attention to Los Angeles in 2028 and making sure that we can put together the best competition, the best training, the best coaching to put us in the best position to podium in Los Angeles. So we'll be looking to those athletes that are up and coming to see if they can actually have a spot on the national team and be prepared for Los Angeles.
And for some of the athletes, like you look at Allison and you look at Julian, who are some of the highest ranked players in the world in their classifications, Paris didn't end the way that they would have liked. What lessons can you learn as an organization, as a team, and then for them as players that they can then use to kind of retool and refocus for these upcoming major competitions into this next cycle?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So one thing I would note, the 2 athletes that you referenced, and even all of our national team members, they got tremendous resilience. I mean, tremendous resilience on the boccia court, but off the boccia court and what they live with on a daily basis. So I think the message to them is this wasn't the end, Paris. It's part of a journey, and it's part of a pathway forward. And there's some learnings that we can take from there in terms of how we prepare for the competitions, how we train for the competitions, what we're actually doing there. We got some really good takeaways from that. We've done some one-on-one interviews. We're doing what we refer to as a high-performance debrief, and we're going to take those messages and make sure that we make the necessary adaptations for Los Angeles. But we're proud of our athletes. We thought they put everything they could on the court out there in Paris.
Yeah. Boccia is a sport of ever-changing flow, and that resiliency that is so needed. And with that, too, it's showing that next crew, that next group of what's possible when you put that work in and going forward into future events and future games. And you mentioned this is the first year that the national championships are in Ottawa. How important is it to have these championships come to different cities so you can grow that base, you can grow that developmental class, and just get more people out there learning about the resiliency, but also the strength of what it takes to be a boccia player?
Yeah, from a legacy standpoint, Nathan, absolutely 100%, because we will see a growth in boccia programming here at the local level as a result of having the Canadian Championships. And you do see some athletes, quite frankly, that may come out to the Canadian Championships that wouldn't happen if they're in Vancouver or St. John's, Newfoundland, or anywhere in between. So being able to move the championships around, to grow the exposure of the sport, to get new people involved in the sport, it's something that we're consciously doing every single year for sure. It's important for the growth of the sport.
And on the logistical side, like for yourself and the organization, like what kind of prep work goes into hosting and preparing for a Canadian championship like this one?
Well, it's huge. Frankly, you want to have about a year out to kind of start planning this, but we only had 6 months, so we're pretty proud of ourselves. We put together a really good team. Generally, we start with identifying a host organizing committee. And within that host organizing committee, you have leads for all the different departments, such as transportation, accommodation, venue, media, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been fortunate. We brought about a dozen people together who come together as individuals, but have really blended nicely as a team to be able to execute on this. And just, having a championships for athletes with disabilities, it just brings from an accessibility, just another level you need to be thinking through from an accessible standpoint, the venue, the hotels for sure, the transportation. So you got to make sure that you're thinking through all the different scenarios for sure.
Is there any one thing that stands out most to you that you and your team are most looking forward to as boccia just keeps its development and keeps its growth as we go into what is the 2024 National Championships?
Well, yeah, so we're looking forward to seeing, as I said, there's lots of new up and comers. So we're looking forward to seeing them. I think this year we're looking forward to, again, that camaraderie that you actually see within the boccia community. I'd love to see these new friendships that are made and reacquaintances from people that haven't seen each other for some time. And I love to see exactly how the training and effort and time that the athletes have put into it, how it actually executes here at the Canadian Championships. So I think, as I mentioned, I think we're going to see tremendous skill, some clutch shots, some upsets for sure. And that's what we're looking forward to in 2024.
And also, too, for like a sport like boccia and having put in the work, the effort to really grow the sport and continue to see the interest grow, the success grow within the sport. Like, what does it mean? What hope does that give you that, okay, there is a long-term sustained success within the sport, within Canada, and that, when you do have these championships, that you move it to different places like Ottawa for this year, that it's going to continue to help push that mission forward of growing the sport in Canada?
Yeah, we're very fortunate, first of all, as a national sport organization, to have partners boots on the ground, essentially, or wheels on the ground, to be able to promote this sport right across the country. So we have a number of partners that help us actually do that for sure. The sport itself, just, through the Paralympic movement, and even this year in terms of CBC and their platforms for showing boccia, it's certainly helped from the awareness and exposure standpoint. I know I've been in a number of places recently where people are like, that Alison Levine, she's good. I've seen her. I saw her on CBC Gem. So I think to your question, to the more exposure, the more awareness, it's going to help us for sure. It's going to increase participation rates, which is huge. And then those participation rates, people work through the pathway, that maybe they're competing at a local club, for example, want to take the next step, go to a provincial championships, take the next step, go to national championships, maybe make a national team and compete across the world. So again, having the awareness and the exposure for boccia increasing is huge to increase participation rates, which helps us as an organization.
Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and Nathan about this. It's an exciting time. We're definitely going to be following along and keeping tabs on how the different athletes do. So have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll chat soon in the future.
Thank you so much, Alex. Anyone can follow our social media channels, Boccia Canada, and we appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That was Peter Leyser from Boccia Canada. Well, that was a great interview, Nathan. You can really tell that Peter is excited about this competition and what the future holds for Boccia Canada.
Oh, yeah, it's incredible to hear that kind of leadership and sharing that passion, sharing that enthusiasm, and just talking about that network of community that they have there, where you have these stars like the Allison Levines, Lulian Chibanu, who are giving back, giving that time to other athletes and really helping that developmental aspect of the sport grow and develop. Because as we talked about in previous segments, that's the future of the sport. And to have it in a city like Ottawa and have it close to the downtown core is major. One, for people coming out, but two, ease of access with accessibility, with just the ability for everyone to come out and having it in a centralized location. As Peter mentioned, it's having it in a new place is important just to grow that base and grow that developmental aspect. So it's really exciting, and it feels like Boccia has taken some next great steps as they begin their LA quadrennial.
Absolutely. And from the high performance and national profile to something a bit more regional this weekend, I was in Calgary. I was doing a live broadcast for AMI Audio Live at ASRAB's Site Night Fun Run in Calgary. It's a major fundraiser. I had a chance while I was there to catch up with a couple different folks. So first, I want to throw to an interview I did with two volunteers, Rhonda Pigeon and Michaela Kwan. Michaela, Rhonda, thank you both for chatting with me. Michaela, I'm going to start with you. How did you get involved with ASRAB and then the Site Night activities as a volunteer?
Yeah, so I got involved with ASRAB back in 2017. I started with one of their gymnastics programs. A friend of mine at the time was doing her practicum with ASRAB, and so they needed some extra volunteers. She asked if I could help out, and I just really loved it. It was so much fun. I met so many great people, Rhonda's son actually included.
Yep.
And it was just really great to be able to see them progress and grow over even just a span of 8 weeks. Their skills, their confidence, it was just, it's such a great environment.
And Rhonda, I had the privilege of chatting with your son during the AMI Audio Live broadcast, but talk a bit about your involvement and your connection to ASRAB and when that started for you.
That started about, 11 years ago with my son, Gabriel, who's legally blind. One of his first programs was with Michaela and doing gymnastics, and he loved it. And now, with Site Night, I've volunteered with Site Night for 4 or 5 years now, and have been a participant in ASRAB as well as Site Night.
And can you both talk a bit about the importance of having Site Night as this major fundraising event for ASRAB? You have connections with the different programs, so why is a fundraising event like Site Night so important? Michaela, I'll start with you.
For sure. I think the fundraising aspect of it is one, but also it's just a chance for the entire community to get together. We have a lot of programs that run throughout the year, and we get to see a lot of great people throughout that, but it's nice to have kind of one event to look forward to where everybody can just get together.
And Rhonda, what about you? Like, what is the value of having Site Night, not only as a community event, as Michaela says, but also as a fundraising tool for ASRAB?
Absolutely. The fundraising aspect, it helps with a lot of ASRAB's programs, and gets my son included in things as well as myself. And sorry, what was that like?
It's just the value of having Site Night as a way to come together, but then the fundraising being an important tool for ASRAB.
Yeah, the camaraderie really when it comes to Site Night, meeting other people. My son knows quite a few people with ASRAB and does a lot of the sports, not only Site Night, but a lot of the sports with a lot of the people that do Site Night as well. And I'm learning and I'm meeting new people and getting better with my vision loss and things like that.
And for someone who is trying to see if maybe joining ASRAB or coming out to an event like Site Night is the right move for them and their family, what would you tell them to kind of get them to get involved and to come out and experience it for themselves?
We have the best community. Everybody is so friendly and welcoming, and I think for a lot of people, you come once, and then kind of like Chris mentioned, as well as Rhonda, once you start, it's just, you stay.
And Rhonda, what about you?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Once you start, you stay. I've met a lot of fabulous people, encouraging people, and I don't feel judged in any way. You know, I'm just accepted.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you both for taking the time to chat with me. And that was my interview with Rhonda Pigeon and Michaela Kwan. And now here is an interview with Zach Abdallah, someone who I first met covering Site Night 7 years ago. Zach, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. First off, when you think of Site Night, what comes to mind for you?
I think the biggest thing that I think of when I think of Site Night is the community, because every time I've been to Site Night, there's always that rush right before we go for the walk or run, and there's always that mingling of the crowds, and there's so many people all there for a shared purpose and a common goal of making life better for those of us with sight loss. So I think that the real big thing that I think of when I think of Site Night is that community.
And you and I, we go back 7 years when we first met, when you were the honorary chair of Site Night back in 2017. Since that first time we met, can you talk about the impact that ASRAB and its programming has had on you, that you're continuing to support the different programming and Site Night?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact that it has had on me is just making sure that I stay sane, to be honest, because so much of life is tough. There's stresses, there's everything, but being active in this world really can help with that. So without having done Movement for Me with ASRAB, I wouldn't have known how to do sports, and I wouldn't have ever gotten into skateboarding or dance or any of these things that I do to de-stress and have fun. And so ASRAB has had this really big impact over the past 7 years of making me able to live a healthy lifestyle and be the best person I can be.
And lastly, when someone is kind of trying, no, try that again. For someone who doesn't know, how would you describe the Site Night events and the impact the fundraising has on ASRAB and its other programming?
Yeah, the Site Night event is just this place where ASRAB, it's the biggest fundraiser that ASRAB has in the year, and it allows programs for people with sight loss to exist within ASRAB, within Alberta. You come here, you have a fun walk or run, however you want to engage with Site Night is how you will engage with Site Night. It's in the dark, and you just have a good time, and that supports a good cause. So why not support a good cause while you're having fun, you know?
That was my interview with Zach Abdallah. Nathan, overall, Site Night was a fantastic event. You got to meet a ton of people from the vision loss community who were participating, but also there was the volunteers, there was the organizers. The Alberta Sport and Recreation Association for the Blind is a major player in parasport, para-recreation, both on the the community side, but also on the competitive side, because they're also the provincial organization responsible for Alberta's goalball program. So seeing that balance in between these different programming needs and niches that they fill for folks in the region was really fascinating. But what is the impact, do you think, for when you see a grassroots organization like that takes center stage and then really can bring that community together?
It's everything. And as someone from British Columbia, we're right next door to Alberta. And in the parasport community, Alberta has quite the reputation for the work and time and just investment that they put in, not to just the high performance athletes, but that community approach and that community aspect, making people feel like family, making people feel included. And I feel like every single step and every event like this can be so major in just showing people and connecting people to the people they're helping to support, or just letting them into a wider community and a wider network where they're learning so much and people are just connecting. But I got to ask yourself, you've been with Sight Night and you've done events in the past. How much have you seen it grow in the years that you've worked with it, covering it?
Yeah, it has a major impact on the people within the community. Like, Alberta is a pretty large province, and they do programming all over. One of the big things is the more communities they're influencing, from Red Deer to Lethbridge, are new kind of runs that they established in the last few years. So you get to see that continue to grow, and we'll continue to follow the work that they're doing going forward. But unfortunately, Nathan, this is all the time we have for the show on PSN. So thank you for chatting with me, and thank you at home for watching and listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Parasport Nation. Like and subscribe to the channel to follow us now.